Jonathan Mitchell sat in the back of an Uber, reviewing financial documents on his tablet as he headed toward Riverside Automotive in Portland, Oregon. At 34, he was a managing director at Catalyst Equity Partners, a private equity firm specializing in automotive retail acquisitions. His firm had $840 million under management and a successful track record of buying underperforming dealership chains, implementing operational improvements, and either operating them profitably or reselling at significant gains. Riverside Automotive Group was Catalyst's latest target. The chain consisted of 7 dealerships across Oregon and Washington, representing multiple luxury brands: BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Lexus, and Audi. The business generated approximately $287 million in annual revenue, but suffered from declining customer satisfaction scores, high employee turnover, and operational inefficiencies that suppressed profitability. The owners, the Harrison family, were third-generation dealers ready to exit the business. They'd engaged Catalyst in preliminary acquisition discussions with an asking price of $43 million for the entire operation. Jonathan's job was due diligence. Over the next 3 days, he would visit all 7 locations unannounced, posing as a regular customer to evaluate sales practices, customer service quality, facility conditions, and employee professionalism. These undercover assessments were critical. Financial statements could be audited, but organizational culture and customer experience could only be understood through direct observation. He'd deliberately dressed casually: designer jeans, a comfortable sweater, sneakers. He carried a leather messenger bag containing his tablet and notes. To any salesperson, he'd look like a young professional, potentially a qualified buyer, but certainly not someone conducting a $43 million acquisition analysis. The Uber dropped him at Riverside Automotive's flagship Portland location at 10:23 a.m. on a Tuesday. The dealership occupied a prominent corner in Portland's Pearl District, a modern glass and steel showroom displaying luxury vehicles under dramatic lighting. Jonathan entered through the main doors and immediately began his evaluation. The showroom was clean and well-maintained, though he noted some organizational issues: brochures scattered rather than neatly arranged, a sales desk with visible clutter, and 2 salespeople engaged in personal conversation rather than greeting the entering customer. After a full minute, one salesperson, a younger man, approached. "Good morning. Welcome to Riverside. I'm Kevin. Can I help you find something today?" "I'm interested in looking at the 5 Series BMWs," Jonathan said, maintaining his cover as a potential buyer. Kevin smiled. "Absolutely. Let me get someone from our BMW specialist team." He walked toward the back offices. Jonathan continued observing. Customer service protocol seemed weak. In a well-run dealership, every customer would be greeted within 20 seconds of entry. Staff would be attentive and professional. These basic standards weren't being met. A different man emerged from the back offices: Todd Richardson, according to his name badge, which also identified him as sales manager. Richardson was in his late 40s, wearing an expensive suit that signaled his position in the dealership hierarchy. Richardson approached Jonathan, his expression shifting from neutral to skeptical as he took in Jonathan's casual appearance. "I understand you're looking at 5 Series. Richardson's tone wasn't hostile, but it lacked the enthusiasm typical of luxury car sales. "Yes, I'd like to see what you have available, and possibly take a test drive." Richardson glanced at Jonathan's clothes, his sneakers, his messenger bag. "The 5 Series starts around $70,000. Have you considered your budget and financing options?" Jonathan recognized the question as a qualifying tactic, but the way Richardson asked it suggested prejudgment rather than genuine needs assessment. "I'm comfortable with that price range. I'd like to see the inventory. Before we spend time on test drives, let's make sure we're looking at realistic options for your situation. What do you do for work?" The question was becoming more intrusive than standard qualification. Jonathan kept his tone professional. "I work in finance. I'm pre-qualified for financing and prepared to purchase if I find the right vehicle." Richardson's skepticism didn't ease. "Finance is a broad category. Are you in banking, accounting, consulting, investment management, entry-level or more senior?" Jonathan felt his professional assessment shifting. This wasn't normal customer qualification. This was interrogation designed to determine if he was a serious buyer, based on assumptions about his age and race. "I'd rather not discuss my career in detail. I'm here to look at cars. Can we focus on that?" Richardson crossed his arms. "I've been selling luxury vehicles for 23 years. Part of my job is ensuring we're spending our time with qualified buyers. The 5 Series is a significant investment. I need to know you're genuinely in the market for this level of vehicle. I've told you I'm pre-qualified and ready to purchase. What else do you need? Pre-qualified from where? A credit union? Bank? Dealer financing? Does it matter? Pre-qualification means a lender has assessed my creditworthiness and approved a loan amount." Richardson's expression hardened. "It matters because I've seen a lot of people come in here claiming they're ready to buy when they're really just test driving expensive cars they can't afford. I'm protecting my time and my sales team's time." Jonathan pulled out his phone. "Would you like to see my pre-approval letter?" "Sure." Jonathan pulled up a genuine pre-approval letter he maintained for personal vehicle purchases. It showed approval for up to $150,000 from a major national bank, with excellent credit terms. Richardson glanced at the phone screen. "This could be edited. I've seen people Photoshop documents before." Jonathan stared at him. "You're suggesting I fabricated a pre-approval letter?" "I'm suggesting that in my experience, people who look like you—" Richardson paused, realizing he was about to say something explicitly discriminatory. He pivoted. "People who dress casually and come in on a Tuesday morning without an appointment often aren't serious buyers." "People who look like me," Jonathan repeated, meaning young or meaning black. Richardson's face flushed. "I never mentioned race. Don't put words in my mouth. You didn't have to mention it. Your assumptions are obvious. You've questioned my employment, my finances, my documentation, and my seriousness as a buyer, based on nothing but your assessment of my appearance. I'm doing my job, which is qualifying customers. No, you're profiling customers, and you're doing it in a way that's both unprofessional and potentially illegal under Oregon's public accommodations law." Richardson stepped back. "If you don't like how I do business, you're welcome to shop elsewhere. There are plenty of other dealerships in Portland. So you're refusing to show me vehicles or provide a test drive. I'm declining to invest time with someone who's more interested in accusing me of discrimination than in actually buying a car." Jonathan remained calm. "For the record, I came here to look at BMW 5 Series vehicles, expressed readiness to purchase, showed you pre-approval documentation, and you've refused service based on what appears to be racial profiling. Is that accurate? Get out of my dealership. Your dealership. Do you own Riverside Automotive? I'm the sales manager. I have authority over who we serve." "Actually, you don't. Oregon law requires businesses open to the public to serve all customers equally, regardless of race. But I'll leave, and I'll document this interaction thoroughly." Jonathan walked out of Riverside Automotive, returned to his Uber waiting in the parking lot, and immediately opened his laptop. He spent the next hour documenting every detail of the interaction, Richardson's questions, his refusal of service, his explicit statement about people who look like you, and his order to leave the dealership. Then Jonathan called his managing partner at Catalyst Equity Partners. "David, I'm at the Portland Riverside location. We have a serious problem. The sales manager just refused to serve me based on what appears to be racial profiling. I'm documenting everything, but this changes our due diligence assessment significantly." David Chen, Catalyst's managing partner, was silent for a moment. "Are you certain it was racial profiling and not just bad sales technique?" "I'm certain. He questioned my employment, suggested my pre-approval letter was fake, and said people who look like you before catching himself. Then he ordered me out when I challenged his assumptions. That's a massive red flag for organizational culture. If the sales manager at their flagship location is openly discriminating, what's happening at the other stores? Exactly my concern. I'm continuing the site visits, but this might kill the deal. Document everything. We'll discuss with the full partnership. But you're right, this level of discrimination suggests cultural problems that would require complete management overhaul, and that changes our financial model significantly." Jonathan spent the rest of the day visiting 2 other Riverside locations in the Portland area. At both he received professional service from sales staff who showed him vehicles, offered test drives, and treated him respectfully. The contrast was stark, but when he asked staff at the second location about corporate culture, he heard concerning comments. One salesperson mentioned that Todd Richardson in Portland is old school, runs things his way, and corporate doesn't really supervise him closely. Another salesperson, speaking more candidly, said, "Richardson has been there forever. He's untouchable because he produces sales numbers, but a lot of us know he's selective about who he helps. Let's just say some customers get better treatment than others." These comments, combined with Jonathan's personal experience, painted a picture of a dealership with serious cultural problems and management that either didn't know about or didn't care about discriminatory practices. That evening, Jonathan met with his Catalyst Equity Partners team at their Portland hotel. Present were David Chen, their Chief Financial Officer Maria Santos, and their Operations Director James Williams. Jonathan presented his findings, including video he'd recorded with audio muted to comply with Oregon's two-party consent law, showing his interaction with Richardson and the dismissive body language. "This isn't just one bad employee," Jonathan explained. "This is a sales manager with 23 years at the company, operating openly in their flagship location. The fact that he felt comfortable being this blatantly discriminatory suggests organizational tolerance of these practices." Maria reviewed numbers on her laptop. "If we're going to acquire this chain and immediately terminate their sales manager while implementing comprehensive anti-discrimination training, we're looking at significant transition costs, plus potential liability exposure if other discrimination victims sue. That affects our valuation." David nodded. "There's also reputational risk. If we buy Riverside and then discrimination cases come out, it reflects badly on Catalyst even though the discrimination preceded our ownership." James added his perspective. "From an operations standpoint, if Richardson is untouchable as that salesperson suggested, it means weak corporate oversight. What other problems exist that we haven't discovered? If they're not monitoring customer service quality and discrimination, what else are they missing?" The team discussed options. They could. Option A, walk away from the deal entirely. Option B, renegotiate at a significantly lower price to account for cultural remediation costs and liability exposure. Option C, proceed as planned but require immediate termination of Richardson and other problematic managers as a condition of closing. David made the decision. "We present the Harrison family with our findings. We give them a choice. Either they address the discrimination problem immediately, before we close, including terminating Richardson, or we reduce our offer by $8 million to account for the risks and remediation costs we'll incur. That's nearly a 20% reduction," Maria noted. "It's warranted. We're not paying full price for a business with documented discrimination problems and management that either enables or ignores those problems." Jonathan felt satisfied with this approach. "I want to be present when we inform the Harrison family. They need to hear directly from me what happened." 2 days later, Jonathan, David, Maria, and James met with the Harrison family at their corporate offices in Seattle. Present were Douglas Harrison, age 72, the family patriarch and chairman, his son Robert Harrison, age 47, who served as CEO, and their attorney. David opened the meeting. "Douglas, Robert, we need to discuss serious findings from our due diligence that affect our valuation and potentially the viability of this transaction." Douglas frowned. "What kind of findings? We've provided complete financial disclosure. This isn't about finances, it's about discrimination." David nodded to Jonathan. Jonathan described his experience at the Portland location in detail, including Richardson's questions, his refusal of service, and his statement about people who look like you. He showed his documentation and described the concerning comments from other employees about Richardson being old school and selective about customers. Robert Harrison's face showed shock and anger. "Todd Richardson did this in our Portland flagship store." "Yes, and based on employee comments, his discriminatory behavior appears to be known within the organization, but not addressed." Douglas looked troubled. "Jonathan, I want to apologize. That's completely unacceptable. We've always prided ourselves on professional service. With respect, sir, the fact that your sales manager felt comfortable being openly discriminatory suggests this pride might not be reflected in actual practices. Or if it is, your oversight and accountability mechanisms are failing." Robert asked, "What do you propose?" David laid out Catalyst's position. "We have 3 concerns. First, immediate liability exposure from Richardson's actions and potentially other undiscovered discrimination. Second, cultural remediation costs to address whatever organizational tolerance allowed this behavior. Third, reputational risk if we acquire a business with known discrimination problems." He slid a revised term sheet across the table. "Our revised offer is $35 million, down from $43 million. The $8 million reduction accounts for these risks and costs. Alternatively, if you immediately terminate Richardson and any other managers with similar issues, implement anti-discrimination training company-wide, and provide 2 years of indemnification for pre-closing discrimination claims, we'll maintain the $43 million offer." Douglas and Robert exchanged glances. Their attorney leaned in for a whispered conversation. Robert spoke. "We need time to investigate these allegations internally. There's nothing to investigate regarding my experience." Jonathan interrupted. "I've documented exactly what happened. You can interview Richardson if you want his version, but the facts are clear. Your sales manager discriminated against a customer in a way that violates Oregon law and basic decency. I meant investigate whether there are other instances we're unaware of. That's wise, but that investigation will take weeks or months. We're prepared to close this transaction in 60 days, based on the original timeline. We need a decision on our revised terms."
The Harrison family coaxed privately for 90 minutes. When they returned, Douglas spoke carefully. "We'll accept your terms with the $43 million price. We'll terminate Todd Richardson immediately and conduct a full investigation of all 7 locations for other potential issues. We'll implement company-wide training as you've specified, and we'll provide the indemnification you've requested." He looked directly at Jonathan. "Mr. Mitchell, I want you to know that what you experienced doesn't represent the values our family intended to build this company on. My father started Riverside 70 years ago with a commitment to serving every customer with respect. Somewhere along the way we failed to maintain that standard. I'm grateful you brought this to our attention, even though I'm ashamed it took a potential acquisition for us to learn about it." Jonathan appreciated the sentiment, but remained skeptical. "With respect, Mr. Harrison, the question is whether you failed to maintain standards, or whether you failed to supervise and address problems you should have known about. Multiple employees indicated Richardson's behavior was known within the organization." Robert responded, "That's a fair criticism. We've been too hands-off with location managers, trusting them to maintain standards without sufficient oversight. That changes now, whether this acquisition proceeds or not." The meeting concluded with agreement on the revised terms. Catalyst would purchase Riverside Automotive Group for $43 million, with immediate management changes and cultural reforms required before closing. The next day, Douglas and Robert Harrison drove to the Portland location to personally terminate Todd Richardson. They called him into the general manager's office, where they'd arranged to meet privately. "Todd, we need to discuss a serious incident that occurred 2 days ago, involving a customer named Jonathan Mitchell." Richardson looked wary. "I don't recall that name. Black man, early 30s, came in looking at 5 Series BMWs. Recognition and defensiveness crossed Richardson's face. Oh, him. He wasn't a serious buyer. He was dressed inappropriately, had an attitude, and got angry when I tried to qualify him." Douglas's voice was cold. "He was an extremely serious buyer, Todd. He was the managing director of the private equity firm that's in the process of acquiring this entire dealership chain for $43 million. Richardson's face went pale. "He was what?" "He was conducting due diligence on our business. He came here to evaluate customer service, sales practices, and employee professionalism. Instead, you racially profiled him, refused to show him vehicles, suggested his financial documentation was fake, and ordered him out of the dealership." "I didn't racially profile anyone. You told him people who look like you aren't serious buyers. Don't insult us by pretending that wasn't about race. I was talking about people dressed casually." Robert interjected, "Todd, stop. We've reviewed Jonathan Mitchell's documentation of your interaction. We've also spoken with other staff members about your history. You have a pattern of treating customers differently based on race, age, and appearance. Multiple employees have reported it. We've ignored it because you produce sales numbers. That ends today. You're firing me over this, over one incident with some guy who came in dressed like he couldn't afford our cars. We're terminating you because you discriminated against a customer in violation of law and company policy. We're also terminating you because your behavior nearly cost us a $43 million sale of this business. Jonathan Mitchell's experience caused the buyers to reduce their offer by $8 million because of concerns about our organizational culture." Douglas added, "Todd, you've been with us for 23 years. You're a strong salesperson, but you're also a liability. Your discriminatory practices exposed this company to legal risk and damaged our reputation with a buyer who could have walked away entirely. So you're sacrificing me to make the buyers happy. We're holding you accountable for your actions. You refused service to a qualified customer based on racial prejudice. That's fireable on its own. The fact that he turned out to be someone conducting acquisition due diligence just meant we actually found out about your behavior instead of remaining ignorant like we've been for years." Richardson was terminated immediately. Security escorted him from the building. After he left, Robert turned to Douglas. "We should have done this years ago." "Yes, we should have. Jonathan Mitchell did us a favor, even though it cost us $8 million in negotiating power." Over the next 60 days before closing, Catalyst Equity Partners and Riverside Automotive Group worked together to implement comprehensive reforms across all 7 locations. 1. Leadership changes. Todd Richardson and 2 other managers with documented discrimination issues were terminated. New managers with strong customer service backgrounds were hired. 2. Company-wide training. Every employee received 8 hours of anti-discrimination and cultural competence training, with quarterly refreshers required. 3. Customer feedback systems. New processes for collecting and analyzing customer satisfaction data, with specific attention to identifying potential discrimination patterns. 4. Mystery shopping. Regular undercover evaluations at all locations to assess customer service quality and identify discriminatory treatment. 5. Clear discipline policies. Explicit standards that discrimination would result in immediate termination regardless of sales performance or tenure. 6. Diverse hiring. Active recruitment of employees from diverse backgrounds to better reflect the communities served. The acquisition closed as scheduled. Catalyst purchased Riverside Automotive Group for $43 million and immediately implemented these reforms as new owners. Jonathan remained involved in the transition, serving as Catalyst's representative on Riverside's advisory board. He personally reviewed customer satisfaction data quarterly and investigated any complaints suggesting discriminatory treatment. 6 months after the acquisition, customer satisfaction scores at all 7 locations had improved significantly. The Portland location, previously ranked lowest in the chain for customer service, became the highest rated after Richardson's departure and the culture changes. Catalyst also reached out to customers who'd filed complaints about discriminatory treatment at Riverside dealerships before the acquisition. 47 customers responded, sharing experiences similar to Jonathan's. Many had simply stopped shopping at Riverside after being mistreated, never knowing whether to attribute their experience to discrimination or just bad luck. Catalyst offered apologies and incentives to return, including VIP service guarantees and $500 credits toward purchases or service. 23 of the 47 customers accepted and became loyal Riverside customers under new management. 1 year after the acquisition, Riverside Automotive Group's financial performance had improved dramatically. Revenue increased 18% to $339 million. Net profit margins improved from 2.1% to 3.8%, generating an additional $5.8 million in annual profit. The improvements came from multiple factors. Rossi increased customer satisfaction, leading to more repeat business and referrals. Reduced turnover, saving recruitment and training costs. Better employee morale, resulting in improved productivity. Expanded customer base as word spread about improved service culture. David Chen presented these results at a private equity conference, using Riverside as a case study in value creation through cultural transformation. When we conducted due diligence on Riverside, our managing director experienced racial discrimination from their sales manager. That incident reduced our valuation by $8 million because it revealed organizational culture problems. But it also gave us a roadmap for value creation. By addressing discrimination, implementing training, and creating accountability, we didn't just make Riverside a better company ethically, we made it more profitable. Customer satisfaction drove revenue growth. Better culture reduced costs. We generated almost $6 million in additional annual profit through changes that also made the company fairer and more inclusive. David's presentation sparked conversations across the private equity industry about how discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, but economically damaging. Todd Richardson, meanwhile, struggled to find work in automotive sales. His termination from Riverside became known throughout Portland's dealer community. He eventually found a position at a small used car lot, earning a fraction of his previous income. In a later interview with an automotive trade publication investigating discrimination in car sales, Richardson offered reflection. "I thought I was being a good sales manager by qualifying customers carefully and protecting my team's time. But my idea of who was qualified was shaped by racial stereotypes. When I saw Jonathan Mitchell dressed casually, I saw someone who couldn't afford our cars. That assumption was racist, even though I wouldn't have used that word at the time. I cost myself my career and nearly cost the Harrison family an $43 million sale because I couldn't see past my biases. Jonathan was literally the person evaluating whether to buy the entire company, and I treated him like a time waster because he was young and black. The lesson for anyone in sales is, you never know who's standing in front of you. That customer you dismiss might be someone who can change your entire life, for better or worse. In my case, it was definitely worse, and I earned it. 3 years after the acquisition, Jonathan Mitchell was promoted to partner at Catalyst Equity Partners, making him the youngest partner in the firm's history and the first black partner. 5 years after the acquisition, Catalyst sold Riverside Automotive Group to a larger dealer network for $67 million, nearly doubling their investment. The buyer specifically cited Riverside's strong culture and customer satisfaction scores as key factors, justifying the premium price. Jonathan participated in the sale negotiation and couldn't help noting the irony. The company that had once discriminated against him was now worth $24 million more than when he'd experienced that discrimination, in part because addressing that discrimination had made the business more valuable. 10 years after the incident, Jonathan was invited to speak at the National Automobile Dealers Association convention about diversity and inclusion in automotive retail. He shared his Riverside automotive experience and its lessons. When Todd Richardson refused to serve me, he thought he was dealing with some random customer he could dismiss. He didn't know I was evaluating whether to invest $43 million in his company. His discrimination nearly killed the deal and eventually cost him his job. But the bigger lesson isn't about me specifically. It's about how discrimination damages businesses financially, not just ethically. Riverside lost customers, had high turnover, and underperformed financially, in part because their culture tolerated discrimination. When we fixed the culture, profits increased by nearly $6 million annually. To dealers in this room, discrimination isn't just wrong, it's expensive. Every customer you profile and dismiss might be your next sale, might refer friends and family, might become a loyal customer for decades. Or they might be someone conducting due diligence on acquiring your business. Jonathan concluded, Todd Richardson saw a young black man in jeans and decided I wasn't worth his time. That split-second judgment based on racial stereotypes cost him his 23-year career and cost his employer millions in lost value. The question for everyone here is, how many Todd Richardsons work in your dealerships?
How much business are you losing because your employees make assumptions based on appearance rather than actually serving customers?
The speech sparked industry-wide conversation. Several dealer groups implemented mystery shopping programs specifically to test for discriminatory treatment. Automotive manufacturer diversity councils used Jonathan's experience as a training example, and in Portland, the Riverside automotive location where Jonathan had been discriminated against now featured in its employee training program a detailed case study of the customer who evaluated us while we failed to serve him. New employees learned about Todd Richardson not as a villain to be condemned, but as a cautionary example of how biases, left unexamined and unchallenged, could destroy careers and harm businesses. Richardson's story became a teaching moment. The sales manager who refused service to a customer and ended up refusing service to the person who would have been his new owner. That was the power of accountability in action. Not just punishing discrimination after it occurred, but creating systems and cultures where discrimination was recognized as both ethically wrong and economically damaging. And for Jonathan Mitchell, the experience reinforced a lesson he'd carry throughout his career. Power wasn't just about personal advancement or financial success. It was about using positions of authority to create change that benefited everyone who came after. Todd Richardson had discriminated against someone who happened to have the power to hold him accountable and transform an entire company. That accountability ensured future customers wouldn't experience what Jonathan had, and that businesses recognized discrimination as a liability they couldn't afford.
Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.